Hey everybody, Bonehead for the Bonehead podcast and welcome to Monthly Meta. This is our monthly show where we have a look at the state of competitive Blood Bowl. So thanks to some feedback from you guys last time, we're going to skip the what's legal bit. We're going to do a separate video of getting into Blood Bowl and we'll do updates as and when new things happen to the hobby. But for now, we're just going to focus on what's lethal. So looking at NAF results over the last month, which teams have been the most popular and which teams have been the most winningest, which ones have done the best. And we're going to compare January to February. So you'll see movement up and down. And I guarantee you, this is not a clickbait thing because I don't think I put it in the thumbnail. You are going to be very surprised by the first place team this month. All right, let's get started. Let's hit the most winning team. So this is based on win percentage over the last period since we last did the last video until now, which teams you're going to see how many games played, which is GP, and the percentage of win there as well. So starting at the very bottom, we've got down 3 spaces, we've got Ogres. Down 10 places, we've got Black Orcs. Up 1 smidge, we've got Gnomes. So an interesting trio of teams here. Ogres and Gnomes are both stunty teams. They are supposed to be bad at Blood Bowl. It's a tough one here because Ogres are actually quite a good team. With just a few skills, they become pretty decent. Not a huge amount of numbers for any of these teams here, but Black Orcs and Ogres, they struggle a bit. Badlands Brawls is, unless the team itself as a core doesn't need a huge amount, they're not doing great with the new format where a lot of star players are penalised. So Ogres, Ogres you should be able to afford in your build. If you want to do it, you can go Griff, but you're going to be giving up a lot of skills and a lot of cash for that as well. Black Orcs are a tough one. They're a beginner team. You can see they're actually becoming way less popular. I love Black Orcs, but they miss that fast piece. They miss that something special. Now they can take some good options, but they're just not cutting it. And Black Orcs have been, they bounced up over the last month, but they've been consistently, I think, one of the bottom 5 teams in competitive Blood Bowl. They just miss a bit of juice. They just miss a movement 7 or movement 8 piece, just something to get them over the hump. They can crump, but they can't get over the hump. Gnomes up 1 spot. We're going to claim that for our coach, Ben Davey, who went 5-0 at Beachhead last month with Maple and guard spam Gnomes. Absolutely wicked to see. Up into 40%, 42%, and up a spot. Down 5 spots, Halflings, another tier 3 team. Again, probably also suffering a little bit. It's difficult to be a stunty at the moment because you kind of, Halflings especially, like I've always described Halflings as they're like the team that is the bread. Okay, Halflings are a bread. They are great. Like, bread is great, but it's generally best when it's a sandwich, right? You take a Halflings, you take a star player as your filler, and you take the trees on top. That's your Halfling sandwich, which is very appropriate because Halflings like to eat. When you're getting taxed on star players, the sandwich gets a bit skinny and it tends to be mostly bread. And that's the point at which Halflings don't achieve as well as perhaps they could. So Halflings dropping there. So these are all the teams that are sitting outside of the Goldilocks zone. We always kind of say 5% up and down and 50%. It's the Goldilocks zone. So these teams are technically underperforming. Ogres, Gnomes, Halflings are stunty. You want them to underperform. You don't want them to, you want them to spike and have it be really special. Gnomes in Beachhead, really special moment. Black Orcs there is a bit of a shame, but they are suffering, I think, from being a Badlands Brawls team as well. So as we move into the Goldilocks zone at 45% win rate, we've got Orcs and Slann. Now Orcs absolutely hooning in the games there, 600 games. Slann not, 164. So Slann's an interesting team where it's an unofficial team. It's just kind of kept alive by the NAF. I think we're going to see it perpetually decline in popularity, which is a shame because it's actually one of my favourite teams to play. Like Space Frogs bouncing around, it's just such a different game. Like I love the playstyle for Slann, and that can be really potent. But if you're in an environment where you don't have access to all the rerolls you want to take, it can be pretty brutal. And quite frankly, if you just keep rolling 2s, you can't win anyway. Orcs down 10 spot is actually a massive swing for them. I don't know why that is. Orcs don't need much. They don't need anything. You can put Orcs in a tournament with 1 million gold and 6 skills, and they'll be able to hold their own against most every team. So I'm not really sure why Orcs are dropping 10 spots. That's pretty brutal, but I don't think that's going to last. Up 2 spots, you've got Nurgle, you've got Chaos Dwarf, up 1 spot, down 1 spot, Nobility, and up 4 spots, you've got Khorne. So Chaos Dwarf being tier 1 at the moment is a question. Like, I think Ben raised this when we did the podcast when the new Chorf roster landed. Haven't played them a bit recently as well. Yeah, I mean, them losing tackle is not an intangible thing. The Bull Centaurs are great, obviously, like, and having 4 of the blockers is great, but going from 6 tackle block pieces to 4 block pieces and 2 other, they are taking a bit of a nerf, and I think that's probably whereabouts they fit. I'd say maybe 15 to 20 is where they kind of belong, but it's a brutal one, and they're not going to get huge access to star players because it's an expensive team as well. Nurgle's kind of similar in that. It's an expensive team, so you don't always get the shot to bring a star player. You'd have to give up. They need skills. They need money. So Nurgle is always kind of going to be a tough one in a tournament situation. It's great to see Nurgle being taken and Spike. That's just so cool to see because they can win. Any team can win in any game, which is so cool. But Nurgle do struggle in that. Nobility, it's a tough team. Again, it's an expensive team. And to be fair, the same as of Khorne. If you're running 1.1, 1.15, you don't necessarily get everything you want to have. All of those teams are kind of thirsty for skills. They all want a bit of guard. They all want a bit of guard, and they all want a bit of block as well. So it's a tough one. They don't get to sneak by with some overpowered stars either. So actually then, I think they're performing about where they want to be. Chaos Dwarves, seeing them drop from the top 10 to the bottom 10 is a bit of a shame, but it's not unexpected. All right, let's move into the middle. Here we go. So at number 20, down 9 places, 48% win rate, is High Elves. So High Elves are a really interesting team at the moment. They are a team of legend and their days are numbered. We've seen what Games Workshop has done with Chaos Dwarves. We've seen what Games Workshop has done with Amazons and with Norse and with vampires. And generally speaking, the changes they've made have allowed more interesting play. So High Elves, as they are at the moment, will not be around forever. So if you want to play some High Elves, do play some High Elves. They've performed so well in this environment as well. So seeing them drop a bit is a bit of a surprise. OWA in this edition, they got shanked a bit with their dwarves and everyone having loner and the dwarves having brawler and just being worse dwarves, and it's really tough. But actually, they have punched well above their weight. They've been in the top 10 quite frequently because it's a really interesting team. Like, if you take away those dwarf blockers, generally speaking, you kind of run a better human team. Like, you've got the human pieces, you've got some block pieces, you've got a troll slayer in there, you do have the option of a tree man, which you can take to save cash, to have other stuff. It's a really interesting team. I mean, if you would have seen it on the Bonehead Championship, if they can win out, and they don't need a huge amount, you just got to build the team right and learn it. So not a huge amount of games for either of those teams. They're 177 for OWA and 161 for High Elves. Not the most popular, and they've taken a bit of a drop on the winnings for this month. This month is a wild month. There's lots of movement here. So down 2 spots, you've got Lizards, bang on 50%, bang on 50%, and no movement at all is Skaven. So those people out there who've always said, oh, Skaven are OP, I mean, they are at League. In the beginning of a league, like first 10 games of league, that's when Skaven do their thing. Tournaments, they're tough. I mean, I don't know, 50% is where you want all the teams. Up 2 places here, which is very impressive. Chaos Chosen, actually a little bit above Skaven there. Makes me very upset, but that's wicked to see. So this is, yeah, fine. Look, Lizards dropping a couple of spaces, Skaven staying there where they are, Chaos climbing a couple of spaces. Lizards and Skaven are teams that don't need a huge amount of package, so I'd actually expect them to be a bit higher at the moment with the kind of the climate of tournaments. Although I guess as more tournaments get more skills and less stars, I'd still expect both those teams to be quite high. Chaos is quite good. I'm assuming there's some good skill packages available for them. All right, now dropping 13 places is our other team of legend here, the Tomb Kings. Tomb Kings, OWA, High Elves here, over the last couple of years have performed really, really, really well. It looks like they're just having a down month here. 300 games for Tomb Kings, though, is still really impressive for a team that's not available for Games Workshop. So, like, that consistency of having 4 no-nega trait big guys is just magic. They're so much fun to run. Down 2 spots, 51% is Humans. Down 12 places is Elven Union. down 7 is Wood Elves, and up 9 is Norse. So all sitting above the 50% threshold here. Humans are performing in a really good place at the moment. Humans and Orcs are two teams. I'm really surprised by Orcs dropping over the last month, but it's a month's worth of data, so there can be some swings. You can, you know, that's fine. Humans sticking around makes a lot of sense. They're a good team. They are cheap. So if you get an opportunity to take a little bit of that, a little bit of another thing, you know, maybe a cheap star player, potentially, I think it's more likely that you're just able to take a bench and an apothecary and all the rerolls you want and just absolutely play Blood Bowl with a really good Blood Bowl team. That's what gives them the advantage. Elven Union peaked, I think, last month, kind of overperforming where they expect to be. Elves are tough. They've got no chance of ever getting a star, so you are just running your vanilla roster with some vanilla skills and hoping it works out. Sometimes it does. Wood Elves are also kind of very similar. Wood Elves have just got a little bit more juice to them. In a tournament environment, this is the really interesting thing about Elves, is Elves tend to perform really well because there's no downside. You don't have, like, Elves struggle a little bit more in League because those guys who get killed, because you're running an Elf team, you're running an Elf team with low armor. You're going to lose 3 to 4 elves in that game. It doesn't matter who you're playing. You're going to lose 3 to 4 elves, and 1 to 2 of them are going to miss next game or be badly hurt or something, which really affects you in League. But in tournament, you can just YOLO. I'll take the cage dive on a 5+. Why not? Worst thing that happens is the game. It doesn't work. Takes that pressure off, which gives Wood Elves, gives Elven Union, gives Dark Elves the kind of extra survivability, because anything that happens in that one game doesn't carry over. So you may lose some tournament points, it may not work out, but it's a 5+ with no drawback, basically. Like, you go for it. Norse, like this, to see them climbing pretty high as well. So Norse, they didn't drop as far as Chorfs with their updated roster. They dropped a little bit. It's a solid roster. Drunkard does hurt them. When you need that stretch play, they can't make it. The Valkyries are a great addition, but when you need that stretch play, having your lineman not really be able to kind of, it just decreases it a little bit. So seeing them overperform in the last month is probably put them back towards where they would be. I think top 15 really makes sense for Norse. They are a very potent, very consistent roster. If you got the right package for them, absolutely. They don't really need a huge amount of skills. Like, their linemen are good to go. It's just their survivability. All right, into the top 10 teams for February for Tournament Blood Bowl. You are gonna love this. Up 18 places to 52%. It's our lads, the Snotlings. So it's so good to see stunties represent well and to spike and win. We saw some pretty good results at Beachhead as well. The interesting thing about the Snotlings is they will get an advantage over a lot of other teams when it comes to tournaments with extra inducements, extra fun things you can take. So Beachhead, we had access to giants from Death Zone. A Snotling team can afford a giant because their team costs £4.50. So you can take the Snotling team and then you kind of just add. So it's a really interesting one because you've got halflings, which I think are very much a sandwich, and you've got Snotlings, which I think are very much a pizza. You take the base and you chuck on top whatever you fancy, whatever you can afford that day, whether it's a giant, whether it's a fen beast, whether it's Morg, you know, and they don't really need a lot of skills. The fact that guard no longer helps with fouling, I mean, it takes the pressure off. Guard is obviously always really useful and it's always fun to make a Snotling block, but having that guard dirty player combo was really cool with the pump wagons. But now that's gone, it's kind of less interesting. You don't need, I'm happy with the Snotling team basically selling most of my skills. If I can get a couple of combat skills, a couple of reliability skills on my trolls, wicked. If not, trolls are trash, so it's fine. So you just kind of focus on the TV aspect, and Snotlings can afford everything. So I'm so pleased they've had a good month. Not a huge amount of games, but a really good month there. Up 18 places, 52%. Also at 52%, we've got Undead down 2 spots and Dwarves back up into the top 10 5 places there. So, hey, where Dodge does well, so does Tackle. So Dwarves going up a bit is not a surprise. Undead are just cruising with a huge amount of games and just a huge amount of consistency. If you watched the channel this week, if you watched the game I played against Milton, you'll know how frustrating Undead can be to play against. The mummies are just unnecessary, and in most tournament packages you can get exactly what you want for $1 million, and then you can just top up to taste. So most Undead teams are going to be running 3-4 ghouls probably, with a bench, with all the rerolls they need, and they're just going to be really good to go. And the thing is, any skill is useful. Undead. We'll see that change a little bit if the amount of duplicate skills gets changed. So there are more tournaments that are coming out now with a cap of like 2 of the same skill being taken. That hurts undead a little bit, but 2 blodge ghouls, a wrestle ghoul, sure hands ghoul, and a couple of guard mummies, it's still a beautiful, beautiful build. Dwarves, yeah, I think they're just having a little bit of a feast on some of the dodge teams around there. They are really, really solid. You don't need a lot. Troll Slayers are brilliant. 1 skill, Mighty Blow, fantastic. 2 skills, Mighty Blow, Tackle. Having a pair of them as sweepers is just magic. Having a guard spam on the front line. Dwarves are still very potent. And quite frankly, they need to be at the moment for what else we've got coming. Chaos Renegades, down 4 places, but still at 54% is fantastic. And also at 54% is Vampires, who are also down a couple of spaces. So that's 2 months in a row we've seen Vampires and Chaos Renegades in the top 10. Renegades are so fun. I can't explain why they're doing well. I can't. I mean, it's the team that doesn't take star players, so having access to more and more skills is a thing that they want, for sure. So if we go into an environment where there's less stars, more skills, Chaos Renegades get better. I think they're punching above their weight. Like if you took a Norse team and a Chaos Renegade team, who would you say over the course of a weekend would perform better? You'd probably wager Norse, but it's just fun to see a spiky month. Vampires, however, it's really cool to see 400 plus games being played with them. Coaches have got used to running Vampires now. We see this with all the teams that land. You have this first month where they tank because everyone's trying to learn them. Everyone then learns them and the spike goes up, their percentage comes up. Everyone then learns how to play against them, their percentage comes down, and then everyone learns how to kind of stabilize and counterplay them. And that's when you see teams start to become consistent. Vampires have landed that now, which is awesome to see because they did some cool stuff. You see some rosters performing really well with the Vargeist. You see them performing really well without the Vargeist. It's more likely to not have the Vargeist, but a block Vargeist is not a bad thing. So it's a cool roster because there's options. There's not just one standard build, which is something I really like to see. Okay, so we're going into the top 5 now. Necromantic at 55% and 700 plus games played, up 5 spots. So they're staying in the top 10. They've actually climbed into the top 5. Necro are a team that thrive when you've got a cash heavy and skill heavy environment. So if we see more tournaments go to 1.2, Necro are going to absolutely do brilliantly. I know there's a lot of stuff going around the Eurobowl rules for these teams and whether they're benefiting them. And I think we're going to start seeing tournaments go that way, which actually is going to be healthy. And I say it's going to be healthy because what you're going to get, I think, is a lot of teams that just don't need a huge amount or benefit from getting more team do really well. And that's, spoiler alert, that's what you're about to see here. So Necro 55%. Right, that's your Goldilocks zone. That means this month we've got 4 teams sitting outside the Goldilocks zone. At 58%, up 10 spots, we've got Amazons. So I love this Amazon roster. They're just about to land or have just landed on Blood Bowl 3 as well, so you can get some games in. It was wicked to see the different rosters at Beachhead. We have a couple of different key ones. We had Torquemada and Greenskill Phil running their try-hard roster, and then we had Anthony running a Drool and Dribble roster. All of them going into the last round were in the top 5 tables. So it's wicked to see that you've got this roster that can do several different things, whether you're playing, you know, aim small, miss small with consistency, or you're going for the kind of bash and dash angle with Drool and Dribble. So cool to see that flexibility. And a team that Games Workshop has brought back from performing really well in a really formulaic way to a more agile team that takes, I think, a little bit more finesse than just kind of guard spam. And I'm absolutely here for it. The fact they're spiking this month at 58%, really quite impressive. And we've got another team there at 58%, which is Dark Elves. And everything we've said about teams that just need more team, Dark Elves are definitely the kind of team that needs more team when they need a team, because they're an expensive roster. You take them at 1.15, you take them at 1.12, you give them some skills. If you put them at 1.25 with an option of skill buy, beautiful. That's where teams like Amazons and Dark Elves actually really come into their own, because 20k, it's not much of an improvement, not much of a cost increase, shall I say, on our Witch Elf, but giving them Blodge instead of Block is a massive thing, or Rodge, whatever you want to go for. Dark Elves performing really well. And then you've got the top 2. You will not be surprised by one of them. You might be surprised by where they are. And it's Underworld coming in. They are back up into the top 2. They did actually drop out of the top 5 for the first time, and I feel like ages. Underworld, hardly any games played. I think they may be the team that had the least games played this month. Underworld. But still winning 58% of their games. Underworld, are a really interesting team. They are so slippery, they are so resilient. Everything we've said about elves not having to suffer the consequences of being made of wishes and dreams is the same of Underworld, except they've just got like a movement 9 guy and a bunch of two-headed little guys and a big guy and some snot. It's just a fantastic mix of teams that performs really well in a tournament environment because there's no downside to all of them being dead. And when it comes to gutter runnering, you only need one to be alive, and this team can take a gutter runner and can normally afford to sneak skitter in there or something as well. It's tough in a tier 1 environment, but the fact is they've got options. They've got all the options, and that's why Underworld have maintained their presence. But the thing I absolutely love about this, and if you've been following along, you'll be thinking, which team have we not seen? Which of the top teams have we not seen? And I tell you what, it's flipping Goblins. Goblins. Absolute trash tier team. The worst performing team in all of Blood Bowl this month are at number 1 with a 66% win rate. Goblin coaches, over the last month playing in NAF tournaments, you've won 2/3 of your games. And you are the only team in Blood Bowl right now who can say that over the last month you've won 2/3 of your games. And 280 games, that's more than Underworld. It's more than Chaos Renegades. It's more than Snotlings. And they have managed to win 2/3. So, I don't know. Is Goblins fixed? Is it all better for them? I don't know. All I do know is that the Goblin teams and the stunty teams performed quite well at Beachhead. But they are a low TV team. Goblins struggle a bit with this because they're quite an expensive roster. But you've got access to like thematic additions. So Snotlings can afford a giant. Goblins maybe dropped a troll, took a slightly better troll in the form of a Fen Beast. When it comes to tournament, if they've got access to star players, there are some star players that can essentially upgrade your troll and just give you more options. I don't think this is something we're going to see repeated, but literally up 29 spots from the bottom to the top in 1 month. Outrageous job for Goblin coaches. Super excited to see that. I don't know. Can you repeat? That's the question. All right, we're not going to go through every team to determine its popularity, but what we are going to do now quickly is have a look at the top 3 teams, the top 10 teams over the last month in games played in popularity. So down 7 places is Vampires, down 5 places is Lizardmen, down 2 places is Skaven, up 4 places are Dwarves, and up 2 places are Dark Elves. So these are all sitting about the 500 game mark, and they're all stayed within the top 10. In fact, the top 10 is actually the same, so we're just going to blitz through it. Humans up 2, Amazons up 6, Orcs down 2, Undead down up 3, and Necro up 1. So Necro sneaking into the top place there. They are thriving in this environment. Win percentage of 55% and 700 games played. Orcs and Undead in the 600s. Orcs actually falling out of popularity, and this is what's so interesting about competitive Blood Bowl is you've got to read the meta, you've got to read the tournament environments. I am surprised by the drop in win percentage for Orcs, but I'm not surprised in the popularity. Amazons there climbing in wins and popularity are definitely a team to watch at the moment. So teams to watch at the moment for me, Dark Elves, Amazons, clearly Necro and Undead are all teams that don't need a huge amount, but they benefit the more you give them. Amazons is a tough one. They just don't need anything. That's what's so exciting about them. So these are the most popular teams in competitive Blood Bowl over the last month, and because they're all actually stayed within the top 10 the last 2 months too. So if you're going to an event, expect to see some of this. All right, guys, we're going to wrap up now. Thank you very much for joining us. I do love seeing some of this monthly meta stuff, but there's a call to action here. Drop in the comments which tournaments you've got coming up in the next month that we can specifically keep an eye at. If you've got a tournament you're going to or running that's got a cool build or something like that, drop it in so that we can have a look. We're going to move away from the what's legal part of monthly meta, which means we've got a little bit of time that we can make up by propping some cool tournaments that are coming up with some interesting builds and stuff like that, and we can pick that up as well. So if you've got a very interesting tournament coming up you're going to, you want some thoughts, drop it in the comments, drop the NAF link or whatever so that other people can see it as well, because I really want to see some of the best and most interesting team builds going on at the moment. So yeah, don't forget to share that, and we'll be back soon with more Blood Bowl content. Happy goblining.